Buongiorno a tutti. Papa Francesco, nel suo messaggio al meeting, ci ha detto che il titolo di quest'anno, Tu sei un bene per me, è coraggioso. Infatti ci ha detto che ci vuole coraggio per affermare ciò, mentre tanti aspetti della realtà che ci circonda sembrano condurre in senso opposto. Sull'esempio del Signore Gesù, il cristiano coltiva sempre un pensiero aperto verso l'altro, chiunque gli sia, perché non considera alcuna persona perduta definitivamente. In questo incontro parliamo degli ultimi, cioè di persone che si potrebbero pensare perdute definitivamente.
We are going to talk about people who have been are considered in today's society as completely lost. There are 4.5 million of people in a situation of poverty today in Italy. That is one person out of 13, 1 out of 13. There was 66 million migrants in Italy. In 2016, we are at 111,000 migrants in Italy. In this situation, today we want to meet two dear friends who share everything with the poor, with the last of society, the last ones of society. Who are the last ones that you work with? What kind of experience do you have with them, and in what sense are they a value for you? We have the president of the NGO Association of Volunteer Work San Nicola, Mario Persano. Good afternoon. I thank you, Monica, for this opportunity, but I also thank those who wanted that I be here. And I feel a bit embarrassed, but I'm happy that I have some friends, and some students as well that reassure me from a certain point of view. I'll just introduce myself a little bit. I'm a priest, and I've been a parish priest for 30 years in the Bari periphery, Carbona. In this periphery, I've and I've understood what it means in front of my eyes. What I had in front of my eyes became a personal question for me. Because what we do from morning to night can never forget the reason of what we're doing. In my life as a priest, I've had various types of jobs, teacher, and sometimes an oncologic center in Bari. And I celebrated my 30 years of priesthood in Bari, inviting the bishop and those with which we lived this relationship of journey together. We had a lunch together. And we had lunch in a structure in the commune, in the city of Valenzano. We celebrated with those who are in need that normally we help. I was surprised, first of all, about the people that I had around me, to be able to share gratitude. Because the first thing that I understood was that everything that we are able to do is truly a grace. We're very lucky, I think. To be able to live this experience is something very fortunate. And to have in front of us these people who every day have in front of them who come to us and they look at us. What are we doing? What have we done? We started 30 years ago with in a very humble way. There are some people in our area that don't eat, are in difficulty, that can't get enough to eat. So we started a social canteen. We started to see the people that were the poor people as a sort of a family. So this soup kitchen made us see these as part of a family, these people. So we continued with what was happening, following what was happening, giving credit to this soup kitchen experience, to the need of being fed, the simple need of being fed. We started to give credit to this, because this is why these people came to us. We began to increase the amount of days, and we started to distribute food. This distribution of food is incredible, because we don't pay anything, we don't spend any money. We collect everything that the supermarkets give to us, and many friends who in this work help us. We don't pay not even a penny for this. In a city like Bari, which is a commercial city, a big city, but sometimes it's a city that is not able to embrace its citizens, especially those who are marginated, those who live in the peripheries, not territorially speaking, but also in their existential periphery. In this, I have to, first of all, recognize Pope Bergoglio, Pope Francis, who gave us great encouragement and great determination. From the moment that he began, and he indicated the gaze towards the emarginated, the poor, those who live a life of waste, those who have been left out, attention towards who make, first of all, create a question inside of us, those who make inside of us ask ourselves a new question. One can't simply offer a lunch without coming across a human face, the person who you're giving the food to, the person, without embracing this person that you're giving the food to. One cannot do this kind of work without encountering a person. Therefore, so I say very simply, it's always a challenge in my life and in my vocation. It's always a challenge. Sometimes it's also, right now, one could say that it's a simple task for us to provide for these, but this wouldn't be enough, because my affection and my heart and my intelligence have to be involved, to be more attentive, to walk with these people, to give a contribution, a solution, a relief from their need. And this is how we continued. The new need for food, medical needs. Then we continued to collaborate for their medical need. We talked to doctors, and they collaborated with us without paying, freely, gratuitously. So now I ask, where does this all come from? This all was born, first of all, from ourselves, from not ourselves, but ourselves as objects of gratitude, as subjects who are grateful. This is how it began. We continued to create an atmosphere for children in our area, being a parish priest and helping them with their sacraments. But sometimes I realize that these children have been left alone and have been left alone by their family, in terms of their family, in terms of their future. I also have to thank, so therefore today I have to thank also the kids that are here today, the kids that helped me personally. I think this is an attitude which is very true, but also that allows one to have a huge joy, because these children come to us to be helped. They help us to become more simple, to be more humble, to be cordial, to be affectionate. Because in this type of encounter, it is truly an affection that creates this link. And we called our association Saint Nicholas, Saint Nicola, because he's a saint who is particularly important and decisive for charitable works. So we've continued with the sport activities in the afternoon. We continued to host young people and older people as a way of supporting our activities, instead of so the people who those who are serving sentences come to us. Those who would be in prison would come to us and stay with us. We tried this idea of inviting these people who serve sentences to come to us. One of these is called Maurizio. He went through drug experience. He was in prison. He got married. He called me last night because he did something in writing in a very scribbly way. He said, I thank you for what you've done to me, I went away slamming the door because someone didn't understand me, and now I come back to you because I think that you are people who can love me in this moment. Right now, he's going through a difficult time with his family. He might once again risk going to prison. I will meet with him on Monday afternoon. I understand that the life of a person can't depend on me or on what we're doing on us. But I'm convinced of one thing, that inside one's need, the most important thing is that one should never be left alone. Because in solitude, in loneliness, there's no exit. Our heart becomes hardened, becomes mean. We need an embrace. Also, our own meanness that we have in ourselves is conquered by something that surprisingly helps us understand that in life there is a beauty and there is a truth. In fact, beauty and truth always go together. When I ask my friends, why do you volunteer? They respond, because it's beautiful. When they say that, they mean because it's true, because they're happy, because they grow, because it's a form of gratuitousness. It's a place where work involves the whole person. Therefore, that which one tries to cultivate brings fruit, because it is the Lord that brings that fruit. So we have continued again with this experience. I collaborate with 3 generals that are on their pensions. That began to help kids with the military competitions, basically the trials to get into the military. These kids had left university, and they began to undertake this trial for going into the army. We also continued this experience in educational terms. Because we want to understand more and more how to sustain and embrace people who live a need. When I go to the oncological hospital, and where I normally go, the last ones, the left outs, and you can see them because this is a very particular type of hospital. It's a hospital that tries to cure cancer, where sometimes the cure just isn't enough, where there's always a question. Why me? This is the question. I've never been able to answer this question, but the only thing that I can say, let's look together at the crucifix. Yesterday I went to go and see a man from Saba, a village close to Bari, in Puglia. His family always used to come to Mass with me. The wife, children, and some of these men, his friends. And I always used to remember this man who was, in his gaze, he had a great pain in his, and the way that he used to embrace his children, as if he didn't want to let go. And certainly this man was prey to many questions, and this man looked at me when I went to go and see him. And in his gaze, he was saying, "Why?" When I saw him happy. He said to me, "I lost my wife. My wife has died, but her presence is always with me. I feel that her presence is always with me. She's always alive. There's not a moment that I look at my children and that I don't think about her, because I learned from her. I learned how to look at my children thanks to her." I'm still a teacher, and in my life I never gave up my teaching responsibility. The role I spend all my mornings in my school, and I have a great desire in my heart to try to answer these children, these kids who have many questions, with many desires. With each one has a unique face. Sometimes they don't ask, but they simply look at me, and I know that they're asking. So sometimes I always ask them when I go to school. I always ask Mary, help me to be a companion for these children. A companion, a father, and a brother. Because if there is something that strikes me about these children, is that I can learn from them. About the way that I can learn from the way that they start their day, from the way they live their day, from the enthusiasm.
I remember when my sister was living hardships, I went to class and I wasn't able to speak to my students. I wasn't able to say anything. And at some point, I remember that my students were quiet, as if they wanted to help me live while I had to live with my sister. They were looking at me, and I'm absolutely sure of this. Some of them, I'm sure, prayed for me and for my sister. So these are the last ones for me, together with many divorced people and together with many people who live their loneliness. They live this interior loneliness. And sometimes I am the last one as well. For example, when I stop asking, when I stop hoping In those cases, I am the last one, and I need to meet somebody who welcomes me and embraces me as the last one. Thank you. Father Claudio, he is the chaplain of the Youth Detention Center, Beccaria, and the president of the NGO Kayros Association. They call them bad boys, and other people call them bullies. We can say that there are a lot of definitions with regards to young people, and I've understood that categories or definitions are like excuses and are the way not to deal with young people. And it's like a paradox, the one that we've chosen as a title, the last ones will be the first. That might be a slogan, a definition, and that's it. And we, the adults, the grown-ups, we're able to, to look at this paradox and not to look at the reality. And I'll tell you the truth. I've met the young people of the Youth Detention Center in Milan, and I've discovered that it was a grace for me. I was awakened as a man, as a priest, and I had been doing the parish works for 10 years, and I didn't realize that I was like asleep in all my social works in the parish. And I have to say that the first boy that I met in the youth detention center was really impressive. It was very powerful for my life, and I was still young, and I went to the detention center and I told this boy, "Hi, I'm Father Claudio, what's your name?" "That's none of your business," that was his answer, and he was very straightforward to me. And I really have to say thank you to this boy, because it really awakened me. I bet everything on my role, on me being chaplain, and on all the certainties of my adult life, but it didn't really work out, because that boy, he was so simple, so straightforward, and with that answer, he gave me back a truth, the fact that I was a last person as well. I couldn't count on my experience, on my role, on my being priest, on my projects. And I discovered that education, and somebody already said that before me, but I discovered that education is a risk, and is a risk for educators in the first place, because every person you meet is a meeting, an encounter that lasts forever, and it's an encounter that somehow changes your life if you let this encounter to enter your life and to change your person. Well, I have to say that that first boy really conveyed me something really important for my life. And I remember that when I went back home that night, I asked myself, but who am I? Who are the first ones? Who are the last ones? Who am I in front of this boy? And my first answer was, okay, I will call this boy none of your business for the whole week. I will give him this nickname because he had been rude to me. And I now realize that this was as if I wanted to leave this relation with with that student, as a consequence of a power. And today it seems that educating is related to power, to authority. But I have learned that education is a circular movement. You are at the same level of the other person. There is, of course, an asymmetry that must be kept, that must be considered because we are in the educational field, but still we are people and all of us feel this lack and all of us are afraid of suffering, and I think that the encounter with these young boys really awakened me and allowed me to realize that our life is dynamic and always changes. And I have to say that staying with them, with young people, is always something new, you know, because every day something happens, so you never know what might happen with them. And somehow this is a good for me because this gives me back the strength to say, okay, let's start over, let's start again with these young people. And it was really important for me because I've learned what Gregorio Magno was saying when he said, I understood many things of the sacred scriptures together with my own brothers. I realized that I was given intelligence thanks to them. Well, I think that it was the same for me, and that's the meaning of the title of this meeting. You are good for me. Well, that's the chance that the other person, the different other, is not a threat, is not an obstacle, but it's the possibility that the different other might be your richness, your possibility, your asset. And this was for me a really important experience, and that's the same experience that I have today with those young people. And today, Father Mario, as well as I, we are the voices of young people, of all the children we have met. Today with me in this conference there are Dalio, Liana, and Mustafa. And I'm like the representative of many voices of people who might tell you the same things that I'm telling you. And we are able somehow to tell and to narrate what they lived and to find the meaning of their lives, because this is the educational challenge. You're good for me because you enable me to understand how valued I am. I'll always remember this episode that happened. I remember that a student once told me, well, it's useless what you do for me because there's no way of changing me. I'm a drug addicted. And I told him, well, okay, you are a drug addicted because you have been taking drugs. And he told me, well, what's the difference with what I said? And I answered back, well, that's the difference. If you are a drug addicted, if you say that, it means that you are that you identify yourself with this evil, with this bad thing of yours. But in the first place, you are a good. Okay, so you have made a lot of mistakes. You have been taking drugs, but first of all, you are a boy. And he told me, well, okay, whatever. I'm not really convinced. And 2 weeks later, I meet again with this boy, and I hear him talking with another student, another youngster, and he told him, hey, you loser, and he answered back, no, I'm not a loser, I'm a valued person. I'm not a loser anymore. And this was really, I was really impressed by this, because we are an original good, all of us. Sometimes it's difficult to accept our mistakes, our sins, our limitations, but still we are a good in the first place, and we need to be aware of this. So in my life and my whole experience, I've learned that the different other is an asset. And I also understood what the education really is. For example, education implies patience and waiting, and sometimes grown-ups don't have patience, and because we need to look at performances, and for example, as it happens in school or in the sport field, there are a lot of different fields in which young people must excel. And maybe we're not able to understand that we need to be patient, and that the most important thing of those students is not to succeed according to the expectations, because many young people cannot manage these expectations and these desires that we have. So I've learned how to be patient, how to wait, and I've learned that waiting is a precious time, and that you are not able to change one person. You are only somebody who is like a friend to this person and who stays with this person. But you cannot use the freedom of those young people. You cannot force them doing things. You cannot oblige them to do things. You cannot create their change. I'll always remember Martino, who had killed a little girl, and so he was only 14, and he came at the Beccaria detention center, and we've been talking for 3 years of everything, but we had never talked about that homicide. We've talked about sports and hobbies, etc. And after 3 years and a half, I met with the mother of this boy, and she tells me, today for the first time, my son told me, "Mom, what if I told you that it was me that night? What would have you done?" And I didn't know what to answer, and I told him, well, I would have brought you to prison, to police, because it was the right thing to do. And the answer of this son was, "Thank you, Mom. This was the answer I hoped to hear." And that was very impressive, because I remember that this boy actually told me and narrated me the details of that terrible homicide. So it takes time for a change sometimes. It takes time. And then you ask yourself, well, you spent 3 years and a half playing sports and talking about everything else. Well, they were useful, actually. It was a long time, but it was really useful. And we need to keep it in mind, because all this time is useful. And it's the same for our children, for our sons. And many youngsters at the Beccaria would tell me, tell everybody, Father Claudio, tell everybody that if everyone is a good for me, they have to act like adults. They have to be real men. They have to show not only what they conquered, what they did in their life, but also what they really are, their limitations, their hardships, and their struggle, their everyday struggle. And because this is what I understood thanks to those students. 2 months ago, I hurt myself when I was playing football, and Daniel, a student, told me, well, you have to stop playing football because you're not able to do that. And I said to myself, okay, that's fine, that's true. I have to accept my limitation. I have to accept that we won't be young forever. We are not always able to be competitive in every field, so the last ones will be the first. Maybe this also means to have the courage to look at the reality of ourselves, which means, okay, I'm an asset, but I also have limitations and sins and errors, mistakes. So this is what I've learned thanks to this experience. And then, the word mercy. The word mercy can become a slogan as well. You are good for me. I was really lucky because I've experienced many of the episodes that are written in the gospel. For example, one day I met with one boy in the detention center, and he had committed a homicide. He had killed another boy, and he read this letter to me. And in this letter he had written, because there are because all the children are everybody's. And then another sentence: I've already lost a son, I don't want to lose another son. Well, this is quite a good example, because this letter was written by the mother of the boy that was murdered. So, you know, hearing those words, reading those words, it was really helpful to me, because I knew that there was this mother who could live with mercy. And this is why I can say that mercy can generate good things, and that mercy is not a slogan, even if we risk, it's a risk for us, because sometimes we imagine that mercy and forgiveness are like a slogan, and because sometimes it's really hard to face the struggle of our living. So, but when one boy told me, well, I'm trying to change myself because this mother wrote me these words, so, you know, everything is possible. So every encounter generates something else. Every encounter means a possibility, a new chance. You know, sometimes we have somehow changed the language of the Bible, and I was surprised some times ago, because when I read the Genesis, I realized that the first words that God addresses the man are the following: you will be able to eat of the trees. And that's interesting, because God says you will be able to. And these are the first words pronounced by God to man. And then the snake comes and, in a very smart way, tells Adam, God didn't tell you that you mustn't eat fruits from the tree of knowledge. That mustn't. Well, how do we conceive education? Does education mean you can or you cannot do things? Well, if we conceive education as if it was a matter of power, of ethics, well, that's not the right way. Of course, justice is important, and prisons are important as well, and they are just for people who commit these crimes, of course, but it's the word you will be able to do this that can create a change for these young people, because when these young people feel important, they start changing. It's not by obeying a lay or a law, an imposition. So you will be able to do this. These are the important words, because in this way people can use their freedom. And of course, then there are defeats. Even if I never talk about defeats, I never talk about failures. There are stories, there are episodes, there is the freedom of people. And we've been talking a lot about these two boys who went to ISIS, and they joined ISIS, and they made this choice. Well, I don't think they are terrorists. No, I don't think that. I realized there was a significant choice, but I still think they are my boys. They are those boys that I met in the center. And of course, it was their choice. It was their freedom. And they somehow embraced a new identity, and then it will be their life, you know. They will understand whether it was true or not, but still, they are young people, they are boys. Today I was hearing here what Mattarella was saying, and it's true. I agree with him. We need to help young people feel part of a bigger project, of a greater project, if there is no future, if there is no welcoming, if there is no sharing, no real sharing of things, well, of course, in the end, people choose danger and difficult paths such as terrorism. One of those boys sent me a last message before he was leaving to join the ISIS, and he wrote me, "Thank you for everything. I hope Allah will help you and we will see each other in heaven." Well, I prefer, you know, it's better to remember him in this way for me. Maybe today he is an enemy, who knows it. I understand that even this mistake, even this choice is a history of salvation in every case. We're not the ones who have to judge. We're not the ones who have to understand what's right or wrong. In the history of humanity, we have wrong histories who have turned into histories of salvation. So that's the way I prefer to see these things. And one final thing, I'm a man of faith, and I have to say that the boys of the Beccaria Detention Center, they have very important questions. So they have questions concerning God and concerning their identity. And when they suffer, they always ask questions about God. And one day, the two boys started talking to me, and I was in the cell with them. And they told me, "Okay, you won't get out of this cell until you tell us this story of this man who resuscitated." And we've been talking 2.5 hours about resurrection, and it was really a new thing for me. You know, it didn't happen in my parish, and it never happened in my parish. Sometimes, you know, we are Christians, and still we never ask ourselves about the most decisive event of our history, which is the resurrection. So, you know, that night I've been talking with them, and then I went back home and I asked myself, okay, so where do I start over? Where do I start again? Because, you know, faith is not an arrival point, is not forever. Because it's not enough. You need always to conquer that faith over and over. You need to be active. You need to do that. It's fundamental. So I have to say that these people are good for me. These students that I meet, these boys that I meet are good for me because they help me not taking for granted my faith. So I'm always looking for certainties and and I always have this faith that asks me, where are you? And the better answer to this question is come and see. Well, that's the task of my life. I have to go and see. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you. Something came to mind. I'm only going to say something very short. I wanted to talk about something that the Pope said. In many disasters that we find ourselves being witness to are really a new beginning for the community of man. Because I wanted to say this because this was very evident from both of your interventions. This implication with the people with the throne aside is an invitation to, first of all, rediscover your own humanity. It was a truly moving testimony. Thank you very much. Okay, nobody leave until you've heard the fundraising notice. The meeting fundraising campaign continues. We were very happy. We had a very positive feedback last year. Anyone who can contribute would be very we'd be very grateful for anyone who can contribute. It would be nice to win the challenge that we launched for ourselves last year. At 9:45, there will be a show on with Unipol Sai in D3 with Maria Cassis, and it's called Un Solo Canto. At 7, the performers will meet the people of the meeting in the Piscine Ovest. Thank you very much and good afternoon.